How are you today? Welcome back to our regular discussion forum, Wednesday forum. Today we have a very interesting discussion on philosophy. So we have very interesting professor here with us, Professor Makin from Nusantara. So he will take us travels temporal, spatial, just to examine way of thinking. So we will review all philosopher before pre-modern and modern, post-colonial, colonial, post-colonial. So and then we will when we think about philosophy, and then the first question is what is philosophy, and then does Indonesia has philosophers? No, we have a philosophers culture or philosophy or way of thinking that can be categorized of philosophy. Because when we, well, it is common in the discussion of philosophy if Southeast Asian has a specific character of philosophy. And then we go back to Indonesia, has Indonesia its own philosophy. That's very Indonesian, that distinct from, let's say, from other countries in Southeast Asia. Is there specific thing about the way we think about the world, about how we, about the time, about religion, about how to be, about human, about nature, about religion, about power? Is there a specific thing that come out of Indonesian nature? Let's say when we think about Indonesia, we have different landscape, right? We are on the ring of fire, which means our our landscape, our land that we live on, it's very dangerous, but also beautiful, right? Does it create something distinct about the way we think about ourselves, about how to be human, and then how to act? That distinct from the West, for example. So today we will discuss all about that, and then how distinct Indonesian philosophers compared to other philosophers around the world, around Southeast Asia, Asian. And we have today Professor Makin today. So she's of course from philosophy department and quite prolific. A lot of interesting books that he wrote and he published already. And and he also experienced living in many places, which means as a philosopher, of course, it will be influential, right? Because when you are in some places and then you see from different position and checking about why people have a different way of thinking. So yeah, let's say if you have been in the United States and then you'll understand that why this social theory is somewhat, for example. So checking, being in many places also influencing to check our way of thinking or our culture of thinking. Right? So the privilege of Professor Almakin is she has that, but that's why he also very prolific on that, on thinking about philosophy, on thinking about way of thinking of other cultures or other people from different perspective, right? So without further ado, I think it's interesting to listen to Professor Al-Makin to, to explain about what is philosophy, what is Indonesian philosophy, what is specific about that, and then what is the challenge of today's world. That is something what happened today in Indonesia. We see a lot of things, but we are paralyzed. It seems like we are paralyzed. And then what is the position of Indonesia today? Maybe that answer why, maybe it also answer why we tend to be like a doorman compared to Iran, which the act of resistance is so clear, right? But we're Indonesia. Why we are like sleep now? Why we don't say anything? Okay, without further ado, Pak Martin.
Berdiri enggak?
Oh iya. Good afternoon.
Nanya aja.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang. Thank you very much, Ibu Chin Martin.
Bener.
Ayo.
Nice.
Thanks for the invitation. Very pleased and very happy. So I would open discussion with how this book is written and how is the response of Indonesian audience. Firstly, this book is my class from year 2000 until now. So it's 25,000 of my experience teaching philosophy in my class from undergraduate to postgraduate. So it's basically questions from my students and the material that I have given to my students and all already discussed in my class for 26 years, 25 years because I finished this last year. And the reaction of the audience when this book is published is I underestimate our readership. It's really very surprising. In 2 weeks after this published, 500 books is gone. Everybody love to buy this book. I'm not sure to read or not. Yeah. Please, my book is sold out in the market, particularly via online. So my students usually open Shopee or the kind of online shopping and finish. So in the third week, I already printed the second edition. This is the second edition, and I put a bestseller. What an achievement! Because we writers complain about how Indonesians don't like reading, and many survey and many opinions in the newspaper stress that we Indonesians don't appreciate books. But I think this is a good way and very surprising. Okay, this book is very ambitious, because I want to cover all philosophers from ancient time to classical to modern period. So, of course, all philosophy class start from Greek, from Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. But I should mention this. All of their views, all of their philosophical reflections in this book is seen from Indonesian perspective. Why? Because Indonesian readers, Indonesian thinkers, Indonesian intellectuals are not aware of their thinking. So please take a note that before the independence of Indonesia and afterward, after the independence of Indonesia, all the founding fathers of this Republic of Indonesia keen readers of philosophy, particularly two important European philosophers. First is Karl Marx, second is Hegel. So if we read Soekarno, Hatta, Syahrir, Cokroaminoto, we can see their list of readings, their literature, their references, all return to Hegel, Marx, Kant, and Enlightenment writers, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, John Locke, Thomas Hobbes. All our founding fathers are very familiar with Enlightenment thinkers. So in this way, we do have philosophers. Who is philosophers? Philosophers are those who read philosophies and then give interpretations. Problem is that our appreciation. We don't appreciate our own philosophers. Okay, I start from Greek philosophy and of course from Indonesian perspective, and it's very helpful for my students too. So let's say if I talk about a market in Athens, in Agora, I try to present to my students how Socrates interact with their students, with the public, to teach democracy, to criticize hegemon or rulers, and to teach dialectics, to questions authority, to question power, and how to fix better, how to fix a society and to improve into a better society. But of course, all of this, because this is written in Bahasa Indonesia, all of this is in Indonesian terms and Indonesian situation, so that my students get some help and guide. After from Greek, I then discuss to Eastern philosophy. That's what my book is different from, let's say, Bertrand Russell, Western philosophy, because Russell considered only Western and European writers considered as philosophers. Other traditions are not. So I also the third part talk about India, China, Japan, and again, what is the impact of this Eastern philosophy to Indonesia? I just talked to Jim, that we Indonesians are very much heavily influenced by Veda tradition. Veda tradition is, at least we can see in the way in which we are very much ritualistic, ceremonial. We repeat all, and we don't innovate, and we don't rebel, we don't revolt, but we obey in order to seek for harmony. That is Shiva tradition. And Shiva tradition, as we can see, I discuss this book later, in Prambanan temples and other temples in Yogyakarta. Shiva worshippers and Vishnu worshippers and Brahma worshippers side by side in one complex. And in addition, also Tantrayana or Buddhist temples. So since the beginning, we already saw our syncretic, compromise, tolerance, and pluralist way. So we are quite plural, we are tolerant, we are syncretic, and we can live side by side with differences. Buddhist and Shiva, Shiva and Vishnu, Vishnu and Brahma, Brahma and Tantra. It doesn't mean we are peaceful, no. We have war. War, Shiva against Shiva, Buddha against Buddha, Hindu against Hindu, etc. Like NO against NO, Muhammadiyah against Muhammadiyah, same way. But NO and Muhammadiyah is quite peaceful. Muslim and Christian is very peaceful. Muslim against Muslim are very common. Christian against Christian also very common since the history of Indonesia. Okay, and then I proceed to Roman tradition. I quote here Cicero, Marcus Aurelius, and that's we are not familiar with. This we are familiar after, I think, after the era of the digital era. Because of Stoic philosophy is very common. We visited the book in Periplas, so we are familiar with Marcus Aurelius, with Cicero, with Seneca, Epictetus. Usually, in order to serve our pragmatic purpose, like as a CEO or director of very big corporates, in order to calm our soul, so we read the Stoic philosophy. I also mentioned my previous books in 5th chapter, which is about Mesopotamia, Sumeria, Babylonia, Egypt, ancient Egypt, And again, I also connect this in Indonesia, how we could understand this ancient legacy that we still continue, that survive in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So our origins from there, Iraq, Iran, Egypt. And this is my focal point, I think, because I teach in State Islamic University, Sunan Kalijaga. I mostly introduce Muslim philosophers from Al-Kindi, Al-Biruni, Al-Khawarizmi, Ibn Sina, Al-Ghazali, Al-Jais, Ibn Tufayl, so many names. And as an Indonesian and a Sunni Muslim, we are not familiar with this. Only after Harun Nasution is a professor in Syarif Hidayatullah Islamic University Jakarta introduced us to a Muslim philosopher in Baghdad and Syrian era. We are only familiar with one theologian, not philosopher, Al-Ghazali. So I consider Al-Ghazali not a philosopher, but a theologian, because he limits his thinking in order to clarify or defend his ideological and school of fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence, his school of thought. So he is a theologian because he doesn't think beyond theology. My definition of philosophy is those who can go beyond his own religion, beyond his own faith, and beyond his own nation, beyond everything seen. We should go further to criticize what we have and what we believe. If we still retain our belief, that is theology. And I consider that, including later Nur Khalis Majid and Abdurrahman Wahid. I consider Abdurrahman Wahid as an activist, not philosopher. I consider Nur Khalis Majid as a theologian, not a philosopher. Okay. Then who is Indonesian philosophers? We will discuss in question and answer to increase the curiosity. Okay, and then I proceed to, European Enlightenment, and that is quoted by Indonesians founding fathers, Soekarno, Hatta, Shakir, Cokro Aminoto. Please keep in mind, Cokro Aminoto wrote a book entitled Islam and Socialism. And he used Marx and Hegel to read the history of the Prophet Muhammad. So he considered, Cokro Aminoto considered Prophet Muhammad as a revolutionary, leader, like Karl Marx idealized. So during the time of revolution, it's very common to see our founding fathers try to combine Islam and Marxism and even communism, and then nationalism. It's very evident, like Soekarno and Sako. I discussed this many times in my book. So I discussed Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Adam Smith, and etc. That is Enlightenment figures, but of course seen from Indonesian perspective. And sometimes I see who quote that thinkers. And then in existentialism, I connect European existentialism and Islamic existentialism. I consider Mullah Sadra as a Muslim existentialist, plus Muhammad Iqbal. In different way. So in a Sunni tradition, as I mentioned, we think that philosophy already died out. We think that philosophy no longer exists in the Sunni world, in Indonesia, in Saudi, in Malaysia, elsewhere in the Sunni world. But in Shia world, in Persia, in Iran, philosophy is still alive, and even develop, flourish. And we found Mullah Sadra, we found Suhrawardi, and etc. And who said this earlier? Who I think is Muhammad Iqbal, who indicated this. He quoted Rumi a lot in his book, Jalaluddin Rumi. And I think Syed Hussein Nasser also show us, I also discussed Syed Hussein Nasser. So this is we owe a lot to Shia tradition. We owe a lot indeed. Because in Shia tradition, philosophy is alive. Whereas in Sunni tradition, we rather stress the role of Islamic law. So the discussion of halal and haram is very much dominating in the Sunni tradition. So that's why Ulama Council (MUI) has a lot of advantage in our society because halal bring a lot of profits, cost fortune, right? When you certify your products and become halal, it costs fortunes. I don't think there's something like that in Iran. I visited Iran in 2017. I bear witness it. Iran traditions is alive and energetic with all, despite being embargo, being secluded by the war, but Iran retained intellectual and research traditions. So after the war, I discussed again Wittgenstein, Frankfurt Schule, or the School of Frankfurt, and including those who just passed away, Jürgen Habermas, Hugo Derrida, and again, this is seen from Indonesian perspective. It's on purpose. How Indonesia understand Habermas? How Indonesia understand Michel Foucault? Because the publications of Western philosophies in Indonesia are quite promising. LKS, Mizan, Paramadina published their works. Indonesian intellectuals are quite guided, and they develop our understanding of Islam with Western philosophies. And that is great because some Muslim thinkers like Muhammad Arkun, Fazlur Rahman, Nasser Hamid Abu Zaid fail to survive in their own country, but they are welcome in Yogyakarta and in Jakarta. They are sometimes disband, but not much, Our government sometimes afraid, they will poison us. But we get their poison already. So government is very late. It's not well anticipated. Okay, we come to Muslim philosophies. I explain one by one. This book is indeed very ambitious because 25 years of teaching in the classroom. And then I think the core of this book is in the last two chapters. My question of archipelago philosophy, the way of the people of the archipelago, the Nusantara, think, and how to give birth to mission philosophers. That is, I think, my mission in this book. And I wrote a couple of articles already deal with such a question. So I start in the archipelago, I start with the Shiva. That is our basic. So Shiva indeed is very resilient in our way of thinking. We think very ritualistic, very repetitive, very ceremonial. That is, I think, the legacy of Shiva. Once I attend a ceremony, I also put in this book, in the temple of Wukir in Magelang, in order to perform Abhisheka. Abhisheka is the anniversary of Prambanan Temple, 1,000 years or more. So it starts from 4 in the evening and finish like 9 in the evening. It's very long. And all the prayers is recited in Sanskrita, in Japanese, or in Balinese. Very rigid, very long, very repetitive, and very boring, of course. But it's very similar to tahlilan.
Boring too?
Yeah, of course. Because I perform tahlilan. I'm from that tradition. It's from my childhood. I do this tahlilan. The procedure is the same. The ornaments there. There are many offering, food. Rice, fruit, cakes, rice cake, so many good foods, and the prayers one is like tahlilan. The only difference is that tahlilan is in Arabic, and this ritual of Shiva is in Sanskrit, Japanese, or Balinese. But it's the same exactly. So our Islam is Shiva Islam. Our NO is Shiva, basically. The word santri, you cannot find santri in the Quran until you die. That is Sanskrit word. Pesantren is not Quranic. It's Persantian, it's Sanskrit word. And the structure of my community and the community is the Shiva structure. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Sudra, Vaishya. Ghosh, Yai, Santri. It's Shiva. So basically, we retain this old Shiva. It's very clear. Our symbol is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. It's from Sutasoma. Pancasila, negara Kertagama is a Buddhist. So our character is that we compromise God. We combine many things, and then we tolerate love. As I explained earlier, in Prambanan, Vishnu worshipper, Brahma worshippers, and Shiva worshippers, they are okay in one complex, plus Tantra Buddhist in one complex. And that is also very common in Kalasan, also side by side, and Plausan also. Plausan is more Buddhist, but the elements of Shiva are a lot there. I'm not sure of Borobudur, but I think beside Borobudur, there are many temples of Shiva too. And today we can still find this. And this is very much also engineered by our founding fathers. The Minangkabau guys, not guy, is Muhammad Yamin. His dream is to revive Majapahit and Gajah Mada. We are not sure whether Gajah Mada really historically exists or not. But at least Gajah Mada, in terms of statement, is very similar, or maybe the face of Muhammad Yamin himself. This is Gajah Mada, it's me. And the way he is, this is the future of Indonesia. We love that, we are great because we have Majapahit and Sriwijaya. That's what Muhammad Yamin said. And that's what Armin Pani said. Against, oppose Sultan Tahdir Ali Sabana, another Minangkabau guy. So basically, the founding fathers of our Republic of Indonesia is Minangkabau guys. That's Great Tan Malaka, Syahrir. But they are very aware of the sources. Sources of identity, of course, they return to Majapahit and Sriwijaya. But in terms of philosophy, they return to Agora, to Greek. The name of Republic of Indonesia, Republic is the title of the book of Plato, Republic. I think they're aware of that. And also the form of the government of Rome, Roman, before becoming empire, is a Republic of Rome, SPQR, Senatus Populus Romanus, SPQR. So we are very fond of compromise, combining many things, like Sukarno. And I think anthropologists before Kit already discussed this at length, that we are very much compromise, tolerant, and creating something that is combining many things. And I present there Ageng Surya Mataram and Mangunkusumo, Syahrir, Agus Salim, Natsir, Kasman Singodimedjo, etc. Yeah. And the last question I think is that how to give birth Indonesian philosophers. So again, we are very rich. We are very rich. We have plenty of theologians. We never lack of theologians. Those who defend their faith, that is theologian. We have a lot of activists, political activists, NGO activists. But I discussed this. We need philosophers who can think clearly, who can think beyond their belief, beyond the power, who can think critically without any burden. Theologian can think, but he still have burden of his on ideology and school of religions. Activist, yes, he struggled for human rights, equality, or many things, but he doesn't produce the activists do not produce a theory, do not produce methodology. We need philosophers. Yes, I do mention like Sumartana, Mangunwijaya, Rendra, even Bagus Sugriwa, Kunto Wijoyo, Mada Titip, Eka Dharma Putra, Hari Budiman, Mukhtar Pagotinggi, Regis jurnalis, Azumarti Azra, Ignas Aliaden, Daniel Dakidai, Mansur Fakih, etc. But compared with the 280 millions of Indonesia, this is still nothing. Who can think clearly, who can formulate what we need and what we should do in the future, and who see the past critically. Please keep in mind, our Republic of Indonesia was founded by philosophers, by intellectuals. Politics, in terms of diplomacy, military, came later. But know what happened in our political national stage. We don't have. Even those who do not read at all is become highly official, like a vice president, not read. Or ministers or the members of the parliament who do not like reading, and they say clearly we don't need smart people. We need people who can walk. We need people who can obey orders. But we do not need thinkers. We do not need people who criticize and questioning authority. I think we do need that because everybody obey. Everybody want to please the order and the authority. Nobody look at that critically. So my books try to encourage younger generations to think about it, to see and to have self-confidence that indeed we have thinkers, no matter what. What we lack is appreciation. What we lack is readers who really can see philosophy in previous writings, who see philosophy in previous scholars. Thank you very much.
He gives the answer of our basic questions. What is the characteristic, the distinct characteristic of Indonesian way of thinking that different from other philosophers? Okay, I know you have a lot of questions, but the privilege of being moderator, I can pose my own question. But perhaps if we extend or decolonize the definition of philosophy, maybe we can see a lot of philosophers in our place. The basic question is, what is philosophy, right? So because when we see from indigenous perspective, that we don't think that way. And then Professor Makin also have explained about that. And one question again, when you say about Indonesian perspective, You said that, is it because of you who review all these philosophers and then you are Indonesian and you are here, and of course you think in Indonesian way, that's called Indonesian perspective. Maybe it does need clarification. Okay, now it's your question. And for your question, is there any comment, questions, please? Aren't you? Your name, your question, comment?
Thank you for your explanation. First is maybe it's the first question maybe is too late, but I'll try to make it simple. You mentioned that Al-Ghazali is theologist, right? Not philosopher, because he did not overcome from his faith. So with that statement, we also cannot see the prophet, example Prophet Muhammad, as a philosopher because he is a prophet or theologist. Is it true or false? And then you mentioned that we think a lot or we do a lot with Siva perspective. We do repetitive, we do ritualistic things in ways in our life. But you also mentioned that from Minangkabau perspective, such as Muhammad Yamin, etc., etc. But I want to quote from Hamka. He said that Minangkabau without Islam, only Kabau, only the Buddha. Right? This is Hamka said. So did or do we also could we also see that Hamka as a philosopher? And more other question is, you said also our founding fathers, Soekarno and then many others, but also there is other founding fathers of Indonesia. They're from Minangkabau perspective. So if we could do that, what they do, why they do, from Minangkabau perspective, is it also same as in Javanese perspective or Bali perspective? This is my question. Thank you.
The second question, then maybe Makin can answer that. Don't you? It's your turn.
Thank you, Jim. Called you Jimatin. Thank you, Professor Makin. Yeah, I think similar to Jim Martin's question about the need to decolonize philosophy. But I'm trying to refer to what you have presented about the Siwa tradition, ritualistic, and then later you categorize those philosophers who are to me not ritualistic, but writers. I was thinking the philosophers that you mentioned, Indonesian philosophers that you mentioned, about their main philosophical thinking that we could relate it to Indonesian uniqueness. Is there anything to do with the Shiva tradition that you mentioned before, through observation on those ritual practices? So that is one thing. Coming to the very basic question, yeah, what is philosophy? Because if you, I think like if we take Siva tradition, looking at those tradition, we can easily find, I think, around the archipelago such practices. And if that is the reference, those practices, is there anything we can take from it as philosophical, something philosophical? I think for this point, my question is that should we categorize something philosophy if it is written? It is articulated in text. Could we also categorize something philosophical as those people practice the thinking, the love of wise, the wisdom, yeah, we have a term of local wisdom. Is local wisdom something to do with philosophy or something else? If it is not theology, not political, what is it? Does philosophy have something to do with such things? From which people are talking about wisdom that we also know in the philosophy. My last question, Jim, is that I yeah, you said we need more philosophers. What happened to the Department of Philosophy? The major, the program, the study program. I graduated from it too. Man, they graduate for philosophy. What happened in that? What do they produce? And so I think my question for that is our question about what philosophy is, or uh, do we expect philosophy to produce philosopher that to do what kind that we expect a philosopher would do? If you like in your last points, you are expecting philosopher could provide critical thinking of the past of what we are doing. Are they different from activism? Are they different from political activism? There are many critical. So yeah, I think there are many that I know you have written in your book, probably that I haven't read. And so thank you very much.
Okay, Mak, maybe you can answer those too many questions, and then we can answer others' questions.
Of course. Thank you very much. Okay, again, what is your name? Mada. Okay, that is
Gajah Mada.
We got
Muhammad Yamin's favorite. So our Gajah Mada is indeed discovered or founded or invented by Muhammad. So, Muhammad Gajah Mada face is Muhammad Yamin face. Okay, good man. Firstly, is a Prophet Muhammad philosopher? Of course not. He's a prophet. So if he is a philosopher, so the Quran is book of philosophy. The Quran is not a book of philosophy. The Quran is a religious holy book. If we recite it, we get at least one letter 10 rewards. In reading philosophy, no reward at all.
Even same.
And you got criticized. If you read Quran, nobody can criticize you. If you read fully some girl will come to your house and put in philosophy, if you read wrong, it's okay. If you say this philosophy is bad, it's okay too. You cannot say that to the Quran. The Quran is bad, don't be careful with your life. Because we live in Indonesia, the majority of Muslim. If you are Muslim, you cannot go home. You are not accepted if you deliver a khutbah. Of course, he is not philosopher. How about Buddha? Yes, I think many agree that Buddha is philosopher. It's very different. I think you should read my book. How Shiva become so ritualistic? Yes. We not only in thinking in doing ritualistic, in terms of our administrative, if we propose to raise our ranking to become professional, we do like a Shiva, we repeat a lot in many forms. And as a lecturer, as a docent in university, also do Shiva tradition. We do SKP, and then PKD, and then presents every day, and then sister, brother, Arjuna. This is Shiva. Of course, this is Shiva. This is spiritual. This is nothing to do with your quality. This is nothing to do with your integrity. It has to do with ritual, with ceremonial. Every Monday, you know, you have every 10 o'clock you have to sing Indonesian anthem. This is Shiva. It's clearly Shiva. So we continue. Shiva is deep down in our collective consciousness. If we become politician, we tend to repeat it again. If we become a lecturer or a university professor, we also obey that. We never questions. We obey that. So if you want to become professor, please repeat this. Put your fingerprint or do presence every day. And nowhere in the world professor do like that. Only in the Shiva country.
Nice.
So what is philosophy? Basically, philosophy is thinking critically and questioning. The main idea of philosophy is the art of questioning, as Socrates always mentions. If you do not question, so you are not thinking philosophically. How is this government perform? Is that true? The approval rating is 87%. That is critical thinking. Is that true? Is a free lunch or free MBG? Is it free? No, it's from national budget. Is it really nutritious? Bergizi? No, it's not bergizi. It's thinking philosophy is very easy. You know, if you question authority, it means you are doing philosophy. If you silent, you become Shiva again. You just accept that and repeat again. And tomorrow we do that again. You know, like present in our campus or like accreditation. Accreditation. It's repetitive. Kurang, kurang. We fill in so many papers repeatedly. Repeatedly. That is a tradition. And if we mention Minangkabau, so I would like to stress this because we owe a lot to Minangkabau tradition. Minangkabau used to be a great land who can produce those who question themselves and question authority. I should mention first of all is Abdul Rifai. Abdul Rifai is a born Minangkabau who questioned the claim that only gods can become a doctor. Minangkabau men only inlander, only native cannot do that. And Abdul Rifai proved, yes, he can do it. And he went to the Netherlands and become a doctor. And even he served as a doctor in the Dutch army. And he wrote a lot in Dutch language on purpose. And he married, I think, 3 times or 4 times all Dutch women. So all of his wife is in Dutch. So that is good. I mean, that is a great way of proving that you are thinking like Abdul Rifai. But unfortunately, Abdul Rifai is not a national hero. Not like Suharto. Abdul Rifai is not, unfortunately, because it seemed that Abdul Rifai already converted to become a Dutch citizen, and he served as a Dutch administrative doctor, yeah, ambtenaar, Dutch civil servant, or beambte, in Dutch language, beambte. And then, of course, Tan Malaka. Tan Malaka is a very good example of Minangkabau contribution to our thinking. He on purpose read Greek philosophy and then Enlightenment and then try to put it in the Indonesian context. And Tan Malaka, you have to keep in mind too, he is the first Indonesian who said Republik Indonesia and become the title of his book, not Republik Indonesia, the word Republik Indonesia. I think this acknowledged by many, including Soekarno. Soekarno mentioned Tan Malaka contributions. And after that, we have to mention Syahrir and Muhammad Hatta. Both are great writers, great intellectuals, and great thinkers. And particularly Muhammad Hatta, and there are many figures, Agus Salim, yeah. Even Muhammad Nasir is from Minangkabau. So we owe a lot to Minangkabau tradition. Yeah, unfortunately, I think Azumati is the last standing Minangkabau man, and we don't hear anything after him. Hopefully, you from Minangkabau. So again, Minangkabau in this book has a special place because many Indonesians in that time coming from Minangkabau who has a great idea. But Minangkabau also admire Japanese philosophy, like Serat Centini, Babat, and then Kakawin. All is written, for instance, Armin Pani. Armin Pani read Arjuna Sosrobahu, Arjuna Wiwaha, Armin Pani, and Muhammad Yamin, of course, read two major Majapahit books, Negara Kertagama and Sutasoma. So both Armin Pani and Muhammad Yamin admire the greatness of Majapahit, or at least he tried to revive Majapahit to become identity of Indonesia during pre-colonial period. And okay, let's come to our director. Thank you very much. He's the one who invited me, Pak Nanjo. Because the philosopher is not ritualistic. Yes, philosophy also involves repetition, of course. Even Tan Malaka also still repeat Karl Marx and Hegel, and also many other philosophers. But that is the art of philosophy. We can criticize. Philosophy is always open to criticism. It's a different from ritual, from rites, from ibadah, from a ceremony that is close to criticism. So even in our repetitiveness, we try to see the past critically. Let's say Jürgen Habermas is very critical to the leftist traditions, the Frankfurt School of thought. And even if we take Jacques Derrida, for example, he's very critical to structuralism and post-structuralism in order to give birth to his own deconstructionism. That's what we lack. We are not only not critical, but we don't read their works. We don't read Armin Pani. We don't read Sultan Takdir Ali Syahbana. Even we don't read the works of Ki Hajar Dewantara. How we can be critical if we do not read? We should read them first and then become critical. In this way, we can give birth to Indonesian philosophy. Without appreciating them, without reading their works, we cannot criticize. That is the first condition. We should read their works. And as Muhammad Yamin did, he read Negara Kertagama and Sutasoma. And his reading until now retained in our understanding of Majapahit. We should read it again, critically. Is it true that Gajah Mada exists? Is that not the Muhammad Yamin invention? We don't know. We should question. And I think many already question Muhammad Yamin. No matter how great is his purpose and his intention. Because in order to give the identity of new Indonesia during the time of revolution. Okay, let's proceed. What is philosophy? Yes, philosophy is questioning. And this should be put in our perspective. Many anthropologists, many ethnographers from Western world always use ethnography to treat us as something that should be understood in a different way, not in our own way. We should treat them differently. We should not consider that informants coming from Sulawesi, for instance, it's not only as an informant, but they should contribute something in our thinking. We should also quote Indonesian writers and Indonesian theories and consider it equal to Clifford Keats, for instance, equal to Pak Mark, to Athena constant. You know, we should put Azumardi Azra in the same way as, let's say, Clifford King. Don't put it less, and don't put it under Clifford King. Because our weakness is that we do not consider Azumardi Azra in our literature review as those who contribute something to our thinking. We always quote great Western names from US, from Australia, from somewhere, and we forget our own neighbors, our own teachers. I think we should do differently. Like I quote Pak Ancu in my writing. We consider local wisdom not as a myth. We should also question at the same time of local wisdom. For instance, if we read the Serat Cendini, we not only read literally, but we should proceed critically and fairly. And I think now we stop reading like Ignaz Leiden, for instance. Who read Ignaz Leiden? Even I ask my students, they no longer read Anafis, the destroy of the robohnya suku kami, the ruin of small mosque in our village. No longer read the Anafis. I think that is one way to remind us that we need a philosophy. It means we need to read, to appreciate, and then we need to criticize our previous scholars from Indonesia, when we should treat them equally with respect. I try to. What is the difference between activists? Yes, I stressed in my books many times. We have a lot of activists. Activists, those who act like what happened in Kedungombo last time during the New Order. Cak Nun come there and protest the government. Romo Mangun Wijaya goes to many activists from many NGOs in Indonesia. But they do not compose a book that explains how we should think in a different way. A book that guides us to think. Their art is great, it's good, it has contribution in defending the weak and minorities. But when we write minorities, we cannot find Indonesian works that produce theory or methodology about minorities. Then we quote somebody else. Thank you very much.
We still have time, so last question, what happened to the Department of Philosophy?
And he can answer it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, before Iqbal, I just noticed that in your book, there's a no female philosopher or feminist philosopher there. Yeah, but you don't mention it in your book. Yeah. Oh, okay. Please. Okay, okay, who else? Bu Alim, do you have comment or question?
I have no philosophy, no female philosophy.
There
Opinions, you want to be book one.
in the books.
So that's the question. Why is it who is she and what is her thinking? Yeah.
Why are they?
What are they?
Because they are great.
Okay, Iqbal, and then who else? Come on, guys, it's a very basic. Okay, two. Well, first, right.
I should pay attention to
Good questions. Actually, I'm a bit curious actually why it is important to categorize who is philosopher and who is not philosophers. I mean, to some extent, it's become a bit superioristic because philosopher is like this. If you're not like this, you're not philosophers. To some extent, it's become like a palu fatwanya Pak Makin. Apa filosofer kamu bukan? It's a kind of a new orthodoxy, right? It's a fatwa sesat. Sampai lupa bahasa sesat in a sense. Because I think well, that's my understanding. Question is philosopher is a systematic analysis of fundamental questions of life, truth, existence. Yeah, this effort of critically, answering questions about fundamentals of life, truth, etc. That's in the work of philosophers. Whether you write a book or not, right? It's not whether because you don't write a book that you are not philosophers. It's an attempt to answer these fundamental questions of life, and Prophet Muhammad can also be a philosopher because Prophet Muhammad critically answering fundamental questions of life. Jesus and all the prophets is a systematic attempt at answering fundamental questions of life. They criticize previous prophet. They criticize previous messengers, etc., and they attempt to answers. Of course, then the followers may not necessarily be critical. Yeah, it's often that's true. I mean, the followers of philosophers may not be also critical. Because with Stoicism, do they criticize that? They are not. They will become a blind follower of Stoicism instead. So they read philosophy, but they lost the critical analysis of the philosophy. They lost the skill of being philosophers. So I think the central question is not whether it is philosophy or not. The question is, what does this individual, this figure, what answer do they offer to these fundamental questions of life? So that's I think what is matters. Thank you.
Second question.
First of all, I want to ask you, why does you mention Rendra and Arif Budiman as a philosopher? Because you mentioned those two before Azraz.
Okay, I can answer those questions.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Iqbal. And again, what is your name?
Imran.
Jimran. Zimran. Okay. Thank you, Pak Iqbal, for critical questioning. You are no philosopher in this room, please. So I opened my book in the first chapter that basically everybody who can think critically or even who can pose a question is acting philosophy or doing philosophy. Like everybody is chef. Everybody can cook at least telur dadar, right? Or ceplok. Everybody is chef. Everybody is a cyclist or rider because everybody can ride bicycle. Everybody also is a driver because everybody can ride at least motorcycle. You come in here with motorcycle, of the college students, and me too, motorcycle. So, but there are some levels. Yes, everybody is chef, but can everybody apply chef in a 5-star hotel? No, not everybody can apply. Yes, you can apply, but will not be accepted as a chef in 5-star hotel. Yes, everybody is a philosopher, but do they produce words that really deserve become philosophy book? That is another question. Yeah, everybody in Indonesia can think life critically, including the activists and the prophet, Indonesian prophet or foreign prophets, because I have Indonesian prophets. Yeah, but there are some levels. Why is it important to claim the work or the identity of as a philosopher? It is indeed very important. If religious orthodoxy can claim they halal or not, they are sesat or not, why can we not claim it the same way as a philosopher? We cannot do that. We need another kind of orthodoxy, not a single orthodoxy. Ulama Council already claimed orthodoxy. many times, and we never claim another kind of orthodoxy. Why don't we claim the same thing? So this is kind of response that thinking is already oppressed. We are afraid of thinking. Even now, particularly no thinking. Once you think critically, you will get disiram air. See, this is very, very important to think clearly and critically and systematically. That is the job of philosopher in academic level, to really make something methodological and theoretical so that we are equal to other great nations that produce their own intellectuals. We not only can produce religious leaders, yes, every day we have ustads. No hours without ustad. Every minute there are some ustads in YouTube, in Instagram, and in TV. But it's very rare to have a philosopher. Even once a year or even 5 years once. So we need to reclaim our philosophy in order to create another kind of orthodoxy that we need. We need to think critically. In our organizations, in our school, in our society, in our community, we lost this kind of critical thinking. That's why we need to promote that indeed Indonesia already produced philosopher and philosophy, both. But our job is to read their works critically. And then from their works, we can develop and then we can create something new, something novel. Why? Yes. This is because Rendra as a lead existentialist philosophy is very familiar with Jean-Paul Sartre. Not only Rendra, but also Karim and also Suman, yeah? And many who wrote poetry and drama are very familiar with existentialism. And also, they also give interpretation to enlightenment in different way, enlightenment thinkers. So that's why I do not hesitate to categorize them as a philosopher, because they critically read the works of European philosophy. Why Ari Budiman? Yes, of course, Ari Budiman, Salo Sumarja, I put in honor them because they already write such great works and deserve to be considered as a philosopher. Of course, Ari Budiman. He's not only activist, and he's also academic. And we need to appreciate them in order to create our own Indonesian post-independence philosophy. Yeah, anyone can have this book. Many ways, you know. You can do it through Shopee, as I mentioned earlier.
Can we get the signature?
Yes, I do have in my car. My student will take it. I think it's like 20 pieces. If you want, my student will get it.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, is there any question? Because you said
Okay, I'm very happy if somebody question. It's me.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, well, when we think about philosophy, we know about epistemology, axiology, and then what else? Ontology, right? So about ritual, in some traditions, ritual is also part of epistemology. We understand something through ritual. Repetition make us understand something. If we think about it, epistemology and how knowledge is also produced. So it's part of philosophy, then, right? So
everybody is philosopher.
yeah, because we criticize about ritualistic, and we think about because in in many parts of Indonesia, ritual is very important, right? But if you think philosophically, and then ritual, it's also part of the epistemology. Okay, any other question? One. No, you understand what is philosophy, right? And you think yourself as philosopher?
But that, yeah, sorry.
One.
Enggak, saya kalau sudah ada sudah mau lagi.
My name is Ivanos. Thank you so much for your presentations. I have a simple question actually. So, we as students, starting from the undergraduate to master's, PhD offers, do you think that we as students we should learn the philosophy? I think it is good to encourage us to think and then to criticize something. So it's not easy for us when we get a lot of fake news or something that we have to clarify. And then what do you think as we are living in a university that we have to learn the philosophy in our daily basis so we can use it in daily life. Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Should I?
Yes.
Okay. We are very late to learn philosophy. Too late. Because usually we get introduction to philosophy during when we are university student. We do not have introduction to philosophy during senior high school and even junior high school, SMP or SMA. That is very late. And that's what we lack. So that's why critical thinking is very rare and very hard to practice. Because our basic is a dogmatic. Our basic is ritual, or fiqh, whether it's allowed or not allowed, halal or haram. But we do not question that too, whether it's halal or haram. And I think I propose in our education, we should introduce philosophy earlier during SMP, during junior high school or senior high school. Not only about, about ritual. We should teach morality, but morality based on our thinking. We should teach norms and law, but we should involve reflection, not only acceptance. We tend to accept and we must accept and we must obey, but we never question. We never reflect and contemplate what we got. That's what we need, I think. And I'm not sure this call is will be answered. But I think we should read philosophy as much as we can. Because now is translated into Bahasa Indonesia. Also available online, we can download it. Yeah. And also, my book is here.
You can download it book.
No.
Okay.
Free please. Please speak up about philosophy.
So you have a question, right?
No. Okay. Still very basic. Yeah, it's easy to say. I also studied from the program very late in S1. But from that time, we already hear like it's everyone is philosopher. Once you start thinking the questioning, it is philosopher. But it's eventually standardized. You only how many lists? How many people? How many you have listed in your book?
100 or more.
In Indonesia.
Indonesia.
Very few. Yeah, you said very few until Azumat Azra.
Yeah.
Meaning, my point is this: simple but critical. I think you don't recognize me as philosopher.
Yes. In my book.
You don't recognize those on the street who are questioning about life. What is God? We found them on the street. Yeah. I don't believe in God. God says it's peace. No, it's not peace. We hear that on the street. Can you categorize them as philosopher equal to Asma Biasra?
Okay. So basically, every culture has its own way to proceed, think critically. For instance, in India, we have at least, Veda tradition. Veda is how to harmonize, man and nature, and then also proceed critically in Upanishad. That's another level of philosophy, and then also Buddhism. Nagarjuna is a great philosopher who questioned everything, that all things in existence in the world basically do not exist. The true thing is everything is God. I think every culture produce its own way how to make this life make sense with the different language, of course, and different tradition. And I also mentioned in this book, China. How teaching the book of Tao, that's, I think, is very critical. At the same time, also calming down our worry, our nerve. Because in Tao teaching, there is many advices that we can take. How river, mountain, sea can be used as a metaphor in order to seek calmness and harmony between nature and human being. And for Nusantara, for our lands, for our archipelago, it's very unique because this archipelago has a distance from the mainland of Asia. We are different from Malaysia, for example, because Malaysia has a direct access to India and China. Please imagine this in a pre-colonial and colonial period when there was no Instagram, no airplane. So the communication between many ethnicities in the mainland Asia make them accessible. But we in the archipelago, even between islands, we need effort to communicate with each other in the pre-colonial and colonial period. Or even after the independence of Indonesia, we still have a difficulty, we still have problem to travel and to communicate with each other. So this also produces unique way of thinking. That's why, as I said, this kind of blending, Shiva, Tantra, and then Islam, Christianity, and then become one, and way of thinking cannot be found elsewhere. If we go to India, yes, we travel to India together, we see that the Vishnu worshippers, Brahma worshippers, and Shiva worshippers, they establish their own temple in different places. But we are in one complex. And even there is a kind of religious movement that combine, like in Batak, Parmalim. Yeah, the people in Parmalim also has some Old Testament verses, and then local mythologies, and then the Quran, and then other stuffs. And that is very common in Indonesia. Not only in Parmalim, but also in Sulawesi, in Java, I have book about Bulia. You read many things. And you cannot find that, you cannot find like this in Lebanon or in Egypt or in Saudi. It's very dangerous if you combine Old Testament and the Quran at the same time. You consider heretic, yeah. But here, heretic, yeah, you can be jailed like 5 years or 2 years. After that, you can do it again. That jail doesn't make this stop, but even more enthusiastic. You see, I put it in jail. It's been trial for me. God love me. Something like that. Okay, thank you very much.
We still, actually, we still have 10 minutes.
5 minutes, so.
Is there any question?
One more questions? No? Okay, I will ask you then.
Okay.
10 minutes.
I hope philosophy is not boring.
Of course not, because it's as a thing, right? So, okay, you already mentioned about the specific character of Indonesian philosophy because of the diversity, right? So do you think do you consider it as a weakness or what, or something good?
What is the specific of Indonesian philosophy?
Okay, what is the specific about Indonesian philosophy?
I don't feel that. What is specific?
Us pluralistic,
Mhm.
tolerance, and always seeking harmony. That is from time to time and from one religious tradition to another, always retain that kind of character. Pluralistic, pluralistic, harmony, and tolerance, and of course, ritualistic.
Is it good or not?
Yeah, in one way, it's perhaps our best contribution to the world. That we have our own definition of
How about
pluralism.
Malacca?
Of course, Tanpa combine many things.
Is he
Syncretic.
focusing on harmony?
Yes. He tried to create harmony between Greek, European, and Islam. He still retained Islam there in his book.
No, he seek revolution.
Yeah, he's critical. Critical to in every corner, but he also has tendency to seek harmony. He still give place to religion. His monologue.
But if he's seeking harmony, he will not mobilize for a revolution.
Yeah, because he has political rivalry with Sukarno and others. I think the question is political pragmatism, not about his way of thinking. It's very political, I think.
That's the problem, right? In making the category.
Yeah.
Okay,
how-
how making this boundaries, but the boundaries.
I will explain. Okay. Yes, we have a great contribution of pluralism. We seek harmony between different religions, even between Shiva and Buddha in Brahman, for instance. But it doesn't mean we don't have conflict. We have conflict, but this conflict is beyond the faith boundary. So, yes, Raka Ikatan in Pramodawadani coming from Buddhist tradition, and Raka Ikatan coming from Shiva, and from two dynasties, Sanjaya and Shailendra dynasty. They seek harmony. They have no problem between Hindu and Buddha. They have so tolerance. But both has its own problem. Inside Shiva, there are some conflict. Inside Buddha, there are some conflict. And even between brothers, because of the throne struggle. The same thing in today Indonesia. We have tolerance. We have pluralism. We have Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. But the corruption goes on. We still lie. We don't show our integrity. And we have to be honest, we corrupt. And we also fight. We fight not only between mosque and church, but between church and between mosque. Inside our own religion, we have problems. So our difficulty at the moment is how to reconcile inside the faith, not between different faiths. But our harmony with different faiths indeed unique. Indeed, that is our great contribution. But it doesn't mean that we don't have a conflict. We do have it, but inside our faith, inside our own group. And that inside group is sometimes more dangerous and more lethal. So killing, like the case of Airlanda in the classical period, is really very harsh among Shiva. And also in Sriwijaya, among Tantra, among Buddhist Tantra, it's very harsh. They are successful in making reconciliation with different faith and different temples, but not with the same faith and with the same temples. It's like our problem during colonial period. Our problem is not between Japanese and Dutch, but between Japanese. King Amangkurat first and Amangkurat second is enemy. They kill each other. they kill each other. Between Sultan Agung and Amangkurat I, some big difference in terms of policy, so the direction of the kingdom. Yes, we agree in pluralism, but it doesn't mean we don't have problem. We do a lot of problems.
Well, Indonesian history is full of freedom fighting, authoritarianism. It's all our contrast to harmony. Wars and authoritarianism, freedom fighters, these are all against harmony.
Yeah, but our rhetoric is always harmony. What we say is always harmony. And what we said is different from what we did.
I think it's not easy to it's become essentializing. This is Indonesian. How can you characterize this is as Indonesian? Indonesia is, I mean, there are so many.
So many things, but we can see the pattern. We can see the pattern. Like reconciliation and harmony between Tantrayana and Shiva is the same here with the, between Tantrayana and Islam, between Shiva and Islam. It's pushed on.
Okay. But you can see the paradoxes, right?
Yes, of course, I agree, absolutely. So we can reconcile our differences, but inside us, there's war. We cannot annihilate the war. We cannot annihilate the conflict. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Okay, I hope you got a lot of things from today's Wednesday forum. Okay, so we end the discussion by giving a present from Wednesday forum to Professor Makin, and then we will ask Ibu Alim to do that. Please, Professor Alim dulu. To give this concept. Oh, yes, it is there.
Ya, selamat Hari Kebangkitan, Hari Paskah bagi yang merayakan, dan kita punya telur Easter Paskah sehingga selamat Prof, semoga tetap bergelik. Ada telur-telur banyak di belakang. Karena setiap orang insya Allah memiliki Tuhan.